Hi, I'm Pete Seligman, Managing Director of SRO Technology. I'm excited to present our new podcast, Measure Up, brought to you by our team to talk about their favourite topic, industrial measurement. We're working hard this year to bring the Ramsey product range back to the market. Ramsey's been around for a long time, longer than SRO and a lot longer than any of us. And so we're proud to be the custodians of this great brand for the next phase of its journey. And what better way to bring you along for the ride than to give you a behind-the-scenes look via this season of our new podcast. Let's go and have a look. In this episode, I'm speaking to Stephan Nel, our General Manager for the Ramsey team as we bring the Ramsey product range back to market. Steph has come from a long history with the Ramsey range across a range of continents, working with the biggest miners across a number of mine sites and different commodity types. It's great to have his experience in the team, but also really interesting to have him go through the process of now forming our new team around the Ramsey product range. So in this episode, I'm going to talk to him a little bit about his experience in the field and also with customers, talking about Ramsey and the range, but also delve a little bit into the experience he's having right now in pulling together our team to bring Ramsey back to the market. Thank you very much, Steph, for joining me for a chat today. This is one of a series of podcast episodes we're doing to start to talk about the journey we're on with this new Ramsey product range that we've bought. But before we get to that, I'd really like to dig a little bit more into your past because you've had quite a deep history with Ramsey. Can you tell us about the first interaction that you've ever had with the Ramsey product range?
I think I have to just step back slightly from that. So started my career as a instrument tech at a petrochemical company in South Africa, then progressed into instrument engineering, and then got approached by a company called Schenck, which is a big dynamic weighing supplier globally, and came across this one guy in particular called Steve Labram from time to time, obviously going to project meetings and that, and we were sat in one meeting one day, and we had a bit of a discussion. We had a disagreement in terms of what customer expectations were and how we're going to solve those. And kind of walked out of the meeting. He said, "Would you like to go for a cup of coffee?" I said, "Yeah, sure, fine." And he said, "Why don't you come work for Ramsey?" I said, "Well, there's one reason, you can't afford me." And he said, "Well, try me." And I gave him a number, and he said, "Well, would you like to pop into the office?" Which was then obviously situated. It was then called Thermocentron, right? Not even Thermo Ramsey at the time. And he said, "Would you come for an interview in about 2 weeks' time?" I said, "Yeah, you set it up. I'll be there." And pitched up at the company office and walked in and signed in. And the receptionist was sitting there. She said, "So your name?" I said, "Steve Nel." And said, "Oh, you had to see Steve Labram." I said, "Yeah." She said, "He's in Zambia." So I said, "Well, I had an interview today." She said, "No, listen, he left this envelope here if you just sign a contract." I said, "We haven't even had it." He said, "No, he asked you just to sign it." And in doing so, she also gave me a set of keys for a new car and a mobile phone and a laptop. And I'm going, "So what's happening here?" She says, "No, you're employed." He said, and he says, "By the way, you've got 2 meetings this afternoon.
Get started."
So I reckon, okay, that's all good. So pitched up this one customer called Metallurgical Design and Management. And the guy says, "Well, I want to talk about samplers." And I'm going, "What's a sampler now? I don't know what." I know bell scales and metal detectors and density and wave feeders. And he says, "Well, I've got this project for a sampling system." So kind of looked at it and said, "Yeah, we'll give you some proposals," and that. Went back to the office, had a chat with some of the engineers, and subsequently obviously ended up giving him a quote for this. And about 2 weeks later, he placed an order. And it was
pretty good start.
Excellent start, right? From not knowing samplers at all to a week later, 2 weeks later, having an order. It was actually quite exciting. So it kind of progressed from there. So I was employed as a strategic account manager at that stage. And one of my claim to fame was actually meeting up with a customer called Bateman in South Africa. And they called us in to come and investigate the possibility of installing 5 metal detectors at one of their sites, a new plant that was actually designed. And it was still in the design phase. So went up to the project and had a meeting with him, brief discussion. I said, "Let's look at some drawings, right? So where do you want to install these systems?" And just kind of looked over his shoulder, noticed some piece of kit that I thought we could obviously produce as well. And at that stage, we looked at a potential order of about $180,000. And after probably spending an hour and a half in discussions with this project engineer, I said to him, so could we provide a quote on this and this and this and this and this? So he said, yeah, sure, you could do that. He says, we've already got our suppliers that we would prefer to supply that kit. I said, well, just give us an opportunity. And went away and with the experience and exposure I had in the past, I was able to then obviously cost engineer, negotiate the whole contract to its finalization. And interestingly enough, though, it was ultimately a $180,000 order, and then changed it into a $4.9 million order, right? And for that, and again, based on the knowledge and experience I got from the Thermo team, I was awarded the President's Council Award.
Nice.
So my first opportunity to meet the Chief Executive Officer of Thermo Fisher Scientific, Mark Casper, at the time. And nobody is actually, some of the people that I don't even know who he is, right? And so, yeah, I'm a strategic account manager from South Africa, meeting up with the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar business.
And how long ago was that?
That was in 2010.
Yeah, right.
So not that long ago, right? So and had the privilege of sitting at a dinner table with him, having some discussions with him, and one of the questions he asked me is how are you going to grow the business in South Africa? And I kind of had to think about it a bit, and my response to that was, for us, it's not really the problem of how we're going to grow the business, it's how we're going to manage the growth, right? And because at that stage we were growing 20% year on year, right? So we had the growth, the stimuli was there, and we didn't want to grow more because we couldn't sustain the growth. And for us, it was more about how do we manage the growth. And that question he raised in one of the other meetings that I was privileged to hearing on also a podcast. He kind of raised a similar question to somebody else. And he said, well, somebody actually responded in this way. So what do you think about that approach? And he said, well, it makes sense. So again, it kind of gave me a bit more vitality and energy to obviously pursue some growth within the business. Ultimately, after that, we got some major projects in South Africa. So exposure was very high in regards to all the various sectors, industry sectors across South Africa, not global as yet. We did kind of delve into some business in Brazil and some in Turkey, and that we built some sampling systems. But other than that, it was more domestic.
And what was you've obviously visited a lot of different mine sites, not only in Africa, but around the world. What's the most interesting mine site that you've had to visit, and the most kind of tricky, and it might even just be small, but kind of tricky application that you've had to work out how to solve?
We've actually got a few, but I think if I take a look and just go back and think about one specific site, I reckon it was probably a steel plant in India. We had to go under armed escort to the application where they wanted to install samplers, bell scales, and some density system and metal detectors. So we were under continuous armed escort. They actually, just the night before, set an online elemental analyzer on fire because they didn't want people to understand what the quality of the product was they were receiving and also sending out.
Mine sites are interesting places, aren't they? Some of the stories that I hear, I've been to a few, but not as many as most of the guys in the team here. And some of the stories that you hear are really quite interesting. Some of them that are in really remote locations where the boundary of the mine site isn't clear.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a lot of local people actually ending up in the pit.
Exactly.
And pulling out a little bit of their own material on the way. And so you can be making your way around the mine site, go through all the safety inductions and do all that sort of process, end up out in the field. And, the interactions that you have in a global sense can be quite interesting and eye-opening, right?
And the thing is, you gain such a lot of knowledge because you're working across different cultures, right? And you're experiencing different mine sites where people have operational challenges, commercial challenges, and that kind of thing. And I think from a engineering, and subsequently I also did my MBA, just to kind of cement and formalize what I've learned in the past and why I made certain decisions. So I just thought formalize it by getting an MBA. And I think unless you understand the challenges that these operators and owners are facing daily, it becomes extremely difficult, and you kind of just you kind of pigeonhole yourself in terms of, this is what I supply. What's the benefit going to be for the customer? Don't really know, but this is what I supply, right? So you've got to understand, firstly, processes within mining and metallurgical processes. So I got a very in-depth experience because I used to travel at least about 200 days a year internationally. And so I was exposed to a lot of these mine sites. And interestingly enough, I have to mention this though, but we had a situation where at the mine site, they would test the coal quality, and they would also measure the mass of the coal as it was dispatched. It was then trucked to various power supply and power generation sites within India. And they would always arrive on the end user site according to the mass. But the quality was totally degraded. And I could never figure out why. So what actually happens is the guys would stop along the road, offload a ton, and upload a ton of rock under the coal. And then eventually when it ends up at the mine site or the end user site, the mass would be okay, but the quality would just be totally degraded, right? Eroded. And they could never figure it out. So what we did was we came up with a solution. So we tested on dispatch and also on receipt, quality, and so we compared the two, and that's obviously where they determined the fault was. And then they investigated further, and then they determined, obviously, these guys were kind of, fiddling the trucks, I suppose, the books on the way to the mine site, so to the end user site. So that was also quite interesting.
And so I imagine that breadth of experience, but also just the opportunity to see the way in which things are done differently in a range of different sites around the world, not only in terms of geography, but also in terms of resource and miner and parent company. Everyone's got their own kind of approach, right? So having a perspective on that means that, I guess, with the role that you're currently in, you've got an opportunity to kind of play that into the decisions that we're making on a daily basis now. Just jumping to that, you've been with us now for a few months. Feels like a few years, but it's only been a few months. We've achieved a lot in that time, but rather than, in some of the other episodes, we've spoken about kind of the technical challenges and the supply chain challenges and all that sort of stuff. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today was actually the fact that you're building a new team, so you've got a team of people here who in their own right are very experienced in not only mining, but also instrumentation and also, frankly, the Ramsey range itself. But the team itself coming together is new. Tell us about the experience you've had over the last kind of few months, bringing together those various people in the team and starting to do that forming process.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So what we've achieved in the 3 months I've been with SRO, and for me, it feels like I've been here for 9 months, right? And it's purely because of what we've achieved in the 3 months. Feels like we should have achieved that in 9. So we're kind of ahead of the 8 ball at the moment, and we're kind of accelerating things. So we kind of have to put a damper on this. And I think probably the biggest challenge I face is on a daily basis is just curbing that enthusiasm of a team, wanting to move ahead, wanting to put their foot on the accelerator and kind of speed ahead. You kind of have to go and say, listen, just hold on, hold back a bit, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges. And the fact that, as you said, it's a team that's got a huge amount of experience, right? Which is obviously beneficial for the business going forward, and where we can take the best of the best.
And I think we calculated the other day something over 100 years of experience with the Ramsey range.
The Ramsey team is 150 years experience,
it's amazing.
Just right there.
Yeah.
So and again, each one in his own right. And they've all different individuals, and not from a cultural perspective, but that also comes into play in a certain way, though. But the team, in regards to experience, has got a huge amount of experience, and that in itself creates issues, right? Because everybody's got his opinion, whether it's right or wrong, but they kind of want to enforce that opinion. So what you have to do is, and it becomes a management nightmare at some point, where you have to kind of put all that stuff into a big melting pot and just go, listen, so whatever flows to the top, you discard. And whatever remains, this is what you're going to apply, right? So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But from a experience perspective, I think the team is well-versed. They've got the experience. They're obviously energetic. They've got innovation in their blood. They breathe and bleed innovation, right? They live innovation. And that to me is probably one of the biggest benefits. Right?
Yeah.
So, and in everything they do, they thinking about innovative ways to approach things and with Matt, and he's, apart from just setting up the supply chain, he's also including innovation in that supply chain, so that he ensures that when he's got this product ready for launch, it's going to be an excellent product. But the team, in regards to experience, they can put their foot on the ground. They can pick up the tools. They can go to sites. They can look at custom applications. They can apply what we have in our portfolio very effectively and very efficiently in applications where there's value for the shareholders of their business. Whereas some people, and I've seen this many times across many industries, they kind of supply equipment and they step away. They don't have ownership of the equipment until such time as the customer takes ownership. So you've got this period of lull where everything is in limbo, and that's where customers tend to lose, I suppose, interest in the benefits that this equipment can provide for them, and it just gets discarded. It becomes a big white elephant on site. And that's where I think my team specifically and leading up this team, I'm actually very privileged. Right?
It's a passionate team, right?
It's a very passionate team, very energetic.
Which, as you say, has its
you
own.
have to clip, right?
But it's if you had to choose between having a passionate team that you need to restrain or have a dispassionate team that you had to try and motivate, it's probably better the former than the latter, right? Like, and I think that it's really just, as you say, working out how to open those valves at the right rate so we don't end up dying from indigestion. And giving each of those steps along the way an opportunity for that team to be able to contribute. And as you say, like it's a super experienced team, and almost surprisingly so with the connection to the Ramsey product range. I mean, you and Jeff and Steve have been around the Ramsey range for a long time, and actually have crossed paths in your own careers a lot, right?
Yep.
So, and I think that from my perspective anyway, it seems like that's definitely helping with rapport and helping, because it's an interesting, even just regardless of kind of Ramsey and the project that we're doing there to bring that business back to life, it's an interesting management case study, right? In forming a team.
Yeah, we're not even in the storming phase yet. We're still in forming phase, right? So in that forming phase, as I said, you've got people that have got a huge amount of experience. They've got opinions, and they kind of want to not enforce the opinion, but they want to be heard. So you got to listen, you got to hear them, and you got to step away from there and go, so what is best for the business, right? So and again, with innovation, they tend to live it. They breathe it. That's what they do. And for me, that is in itself a huge advantage. And the team, whereas they understand the goals, they understand the objectives that we want to achieve, and they all understand the equipment, that kind of just makes it easier, but you still have to manage from a personality perspective. You still have to manage the team. But from in regards to how we're going to achieve what we want to achieve, they all got a clear direction as to how it's going to happen. It's just the speed at what's going to happen at. You've got different.
And from my perspective, it does give me a lot of comfort to know that it's in safe hands, because I can see not only the passion, but also the experience that group of people is bringing to the table. So it's kind of comforting to know that they're looking at this product and this range of products, not with a completely kind of naive set of eyes, right? They're bringing to it all of their experience of that product range, and they know what they're looking for, and they know the kind of things that they now need to work on. So it's great. We're continuing on that path, and I guess a sense looking forward. One of the questions that I've asked a few of the other guys on the team as part of this podcast process has been, what are they looking forward to in the next kind of 6 to 12 months? For you, I've got a slightly different question. What are you looking forward to in terms of probably the next horizon beyond that? Like, you've seen Ramsey, that range of products globally on a journey for a long time now. And we're now the custodians of that brand for the next part of its journey. What are some of the things that you hope we can deliver to that brand and those products and effectively the market over that next phase?
It's actually it's a in a way a difficult question to answer, but also forward looking. And one of the things that really I was actually, when I was given the opportunity to head up this team, one thing that kind of distinguished the SRO business model versus the corporate business model for me was the fact that changes happened quickly. Whereas in a big machine like the Thermo Fisher machine, things tend to take slightly longer, right? So decisions are made, executive decisions are made, and it's implemented. For me, that is really saying that we can pivot our business. We're ready to morph according to our customers' requirements. And I think that's going to be our biggest value proposition going forward. Reinstating the brand is a given, right? So we know we're going to reinstate the brand to its former glory, and we're going to get there within the next 4 to 5 years. We're going to be there. But obviously supported by a very good supply chain and a channel partner, right, model. And for me, the exciting bit and the part I'm looking forward to is kind of pushing the button and putting my foot on the accelerator a bit more, taking it off the brakes, whereas we can say, now we feel comfortable in what we're delivering at the moment. We know we can do it. Our supply chain is in a good position, so we can scale it. And we can move to that next phase where we can say, listen, so let's take off the brakes.
Yeah, ready to go.
Disregard safety.
Yeah,
let's summit, right? Go above that dead zone. Let's summit. We're going to make it, and we're going to go for it, and we're going to stand up there. We're going to wave the flag, and we're going to make success of it. And I think that's going to probably happen sooner than anticipated. And I think, we have to be sure that when we do put our foot on the accelerator, that we're ready to handle that speed, right? And again, for me, the exciting bit is to get it back to that former glory that has been. And we know Ramsey, there's a lot of brand equity in Ramsey, the name Ramsey. And they've always supplied high quality equipment. And now SRO being a custodian of it and improving on that design, for me, is the exciting bit. And that's the part I'm looking forward to.
We're going to make it live up to that reputation that it's had for a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if we look at the big Thermo machine, right? So the majority of the business is life sciences. Now, you kind of have to think, so how does bulk material handling fit into that product mix and that business mix? And I don't think it ever fitted. So there wasn't a lot of effort and time and that spent on the development of the products. And the 10-14-4 has been around for the last 60 years. It hasn't changed its design. So there's no innovation there. But we, as the new custodians of a business and the portfolio, we have now the ability to make something better, still maintain the quality and improve on that quality. And for me, that's exciting. But that's a challenge that I'm looking forward to.
And have that direct connection with technicians in the field and also with the customers to make sure that we're building those products that are directly resolving the problems that they've got.
And that was probably one of the biggest issues that a big corporate has, right? They go, so what if we look at a marketable product, forget about the internal customer. We only look at the external customers. What does the external customer want? They ignore what the technicians want. Whereas we are in a unique position now where we've got technicians designing something for technicians in the field, right? So we obviously improve our systems, our capability in terms of the displays, and Matt discussed it in a lot of detail. But I think for me, that's the exciting part, is that we're going to take a product to market, which has a legacy name. It's got some equity in there, but we're also going to improve on it. And that market adoption, I think, is going to be significant. And I think the market's ready for something like that because it hasn't changed in the last, as I said, couple of years, apart from a couple of relaunches of various products. But and that's the part I'm really looking forward to.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Steph. It was great to catch up. No doubt we'll touch base with you again maybe in a few months' time as a few more of these things come to fruition. But really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
It will probably be a different story of that.
It will be. Yeah, that's it.
Pleasure being here. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to leave comments below. We're keen to get your feedback and make sure that what you want to see is what we're delivering in future episodes. Also, visit the website, srotechnology.com, if you want to learn more about what we're up to. And remember, keep measuring up.